I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
I was a free spirit, and I could just go off in any adventure I wanted. And then I made the agreement to have boundaries, and I miscued.
Today's episode is sponsored by Knock Knock, the makers of the unbearably adorable and exceptionally useful Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. Send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is part 2 of an interview with our guests, Robert and Morgan. In part 1, we discussed the practice of orgasmic meditation, and we also discussed how these two discovered the relationship structure that works best for them, which turns out to be a form of non-monogamy. Today, we're addressing their idea that there does not need to be compromise in a relationship, and we'll address that question from both a substantive and a semantic perspective. And this conversation does stand on its own, but with this episode in particular, I think you might want to go back and listen to part 1 to get some more context if you haven't already done that. Now, as I mentioned in the last episode, Robert also wrote an article for us a while back called "She Gave Me Permission to Sleep Around," and that tells another aspect of their story. I'll link to it in the show notes in case you'd like to read it. So with that, let's go to part 2 of our interview with Robert and Morgan.
We don't compromise. We do not compromise. We'll talk for hours to find the spot that works, but so many people compromise, and they compromise. And to me, I am an incredible person with a mission in the world. And if I'm going to diminish myself to be in a relationship, that's cheating the world. That's cheating myself. Now, luckily, I found someone who expands and compliments me like no one else. But if this relationship was shrinking me, I would either change it or I would split. And I would split not only for me, but for her children, for our friends. There's a responsibility that I take very seriously, that I want my relationship to be optimal as an example for other people, but also for me.
Okay, now I get that. I get the theory behind not wanting to diminish oneself. And I also get the theory about not compromising. And, in law school, many of us take courses on negotiation. Mm-hmm. And they always give the example, the classic dividing up the oranges example. Have you heard this? Okay, it basically goes like this. I'll make it short. Essentially, you've got one country that desperately needs the entire crop of oranges in order to cure cancer, which is an epidemic in their country. And you've got this other country that desperately needs the entire crop of oranges to cure some other terrible thing. I can never remember what it is. That's an epidemic in their country. And so each one sends a negotiator to meet and decide who's going to get the oranges. And usually the professor will split everybody into groups and then see this be played out in 15 or 20 different negotiations simultaneously. Everybody has a fact pattern, and they read a couple paragraphs about why you need the oranges. And then they sit down and they start negotiating. Well, cancer is much more important than, whatever the disease you guys are facing. No. Our people are much more educated, and that's better for the world. And they're trying to figure out how to get more of the oranges. And usually at about 15 or 20 minutes in, one of the groups will realize, whoa, wait a minute. I only need the juice. What do you guys need? And the other people are like, oh, well, we just need the rinds. And they're like, great solution. Okay. But most of the groups don't figure that out. One group usually does, and then they win the prize of the day. And it's lovely. It's a great way to talk about how you don't need to compromise, how negotiation is about finding the win-win, right? Which is almost a stereotype in our culture now. But it's very tidy in that package that the professor hands out to the students. The reality, when you start actually negotiating, is it is sometimes just impossible to find that place where both people are getting a win-win. You end up having to, if you're in a relationship, sacrifice something.
Nope.
I love it. Okay. Tell me why.
I don't believe in the no-win situation. I don't believe in it. the worst case thing would happen is that we don't stay together. And even that, for the 18 months or 20 months we've known each other, I'll be blessed for this relationship,
Oh, no. Come
But wait,
on.
so listen. So that's the worst case scenario. So on top of that, there's all these other possibilities. So, one of the things I learned when I was in school was this guy, Henry Clay, who is known as the great compromiser in the 1850s and 1860s. And his viewpoint was a compromise. The best compromise is where both parties feels like they lost something. That's what compromising is both parties feel they've given up something to find that middle ground.
Yeah, you hear a lot of divorce lawyers say that.
It is, no, I'm not going to live my life like that. We've had conversations on a single topic for days where we are around each other and it's stuck. It's just like, brittle. It's not comfortable. But at some point, one of us says something or something. And so when I said to her, yes, I will only make out with other people with you around, some people can look at that as a compromise, like I'm losing something. But to me, it was a choice. The choosing of this relationship and all the possibility was significantly more fun, depthly more intimate than these other experiences. And so it was never a compromise. It's a choice, a full, authentic, 100% choice.
Okay, now I'm starting to see where you're going with that. But somebody who is very critical of you, not saying it's me, might suggest that that's just semantics. Like, the definition of a compromise, well, is whatever we say it is. But I think the general definition would be you're giving something up in order to get something else.
Language creates reality. Peace. Reality creates language, right? So I can look at it. I could look at that situation like I'm losing something. I lost the makeout with my 6-year crush. I can look at that. I have the choice to look at that level and be in that mode, to almost victimize myself and say, oh, I didn't get to make out with that girl. Bleh. But instead, the level of abstraction, the level of choice I picked was, I'm going home to be with a woman I plan to be the rest of my life with. I'm authentically choosing that this is what I want to do. And in doing so, there's no loss at all.
Yeah.
And now she wants to meet that other woman.
Yeah. Okay.
So the point is like, oh, I can choose to victimize myself in my own mind, or I can choose the victory of continuing and expanding the most powerful thing I've ever wanted. And I haven't regretted for a second that choice, and my life keeps getting better because of it.
That's the thing that's so special about him, and I try to do it too, I think, a lot, is that we choose how we frame our lives. So we can tell ourselves whatever story we want to tell ourselves, which is, it's semantics, yes, and it creates our life.
Yeah.
So, and he is such a willing person. He is a yes to me on so many things, that I come with crazy ideas about, doing crazy things, and he says yes to me. And then we have so much opportunity because we're both yeses to life in general.
Well, what does he say no to?
What have you said no? I don't know if have you said no to me ever?
There was something.
There might be some.
There was some
one
course
thing.
Enrollment thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
you should do a course with so-and-so and so-and-so. And I was like, no, I don't want to do the enrollment game. So yeah, I do say no, but it is rare.
Yeah.
What about boundaries? Do you think about the concept of boundaries, Morgan?
Yeah, definitely. We had an experience last year where Rob met a woman while he was working in Hollywood, and he really liked her, and they were flirting, and they had each other's numbers, and I was not included, and they were flirting for days and talking, having sexy texting back and forth, and I was not included.
Was this before or after the
This
rule?
was after the arrangement that we created.
It sounds like a violation of the arrangement.
It felt that way so what happened was he was going on and on about this was kind of it felt like it was behind my back. He was upfront about it. He said that it was going on, but I didn't know the depth of what was going on. So at some point I said, can I read your texts with her? And I read them and I cried. My heart was broken because there was a lot of sexual intimacy and vulnerability, and it was like a relationship was developing between them, even though there was no actual physical sex that happened. And I said, this really hurts me, Rob.
I was a free spirit, and I could just go off in any adventure I wanted. And then I made the agreement to have boundaries.
Yeah.
And then the old me was still acting unconsciously or consciously, and I miscued. And then I was like, okay, I have to have more awareness around it. It was a lesson. It was a teaching point for me of how I have to expand my awareness to ensure that I don't do this again.
So there was no element for you internally of I'm a bad person.
No.
It was and it wasn't even that I did a quote unquote bad thing.
No.
It was I did a miscue.
Yep.
Morgan, same for you?
I never thought he's a bad person. I started to go into my normal reaction, which would be like, shut down, don't trust this person. Go into my normal story.
Right.
Which would be like, I don't even want to be around this person. I can't believe anything he says. You know, that whole story.
We were on a bus from DC to New York City, so she was stuck.
And you're like, now I have evidence.
So the thing is, I had that option and I started to go there. But then I thought to myself, I've been doing the thing that I've been doing, and it's gotten me to the place I was in my marriage.
You mean in your life?
Yeah, in my life. And I made this decision before that I'm going to do things in a different way. I'm not going to. So every time I have the inclination to go to that really, grooved path, I'm not going to go there because it hasn't served me to get to to go through the life that I've chosen. So changing that belief system. And then so I chose to stay open and just talk about my feelings and just stay in the feelings. And I didn't have to do anything about it. Like I didn't have to blame him. I didn't have to victimize myself. I didn't have to get angry or mad. I was just sad and I was hurt. And it was okay for me to stay right there, which is what I teach my girls to do. And then it was like we kept talking about it and he said he was sorry. And I just thought I can either choose to trust or choose to not trust. This is my choice. And so I chose to trust. And I said to myself, if this happens again and it repeats itself, then I'll have more information and I can choose to make a different decision. But right now I have this information and I can either choose to go toward him or go away from him. And I chose to move toward him. And it hasn't ever happened since.
I'm thinking about like a hot stove. There's a hot stove, so you learn not to touch it. And you can just decide never to touch stoves again, or you can wait until they're cooled down and then touch them. I don't know if that's quite the right analogy, but the reason I bring it up is now when you lean into him, is there any part of you that's wonders if there's going to be a burn?
No, there's not one part of me. It's never happened again. And I felt so heard by him. And he validated my feelings at that time. When I said, this is crossing the line, this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel like it's really what we talked about, he said, yeah, you're right. He didn't deny that he didn't try to make me the crazy one. And he heard me, and he changed his behavior. And so it was safe.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Rob really makes me feel so safe and so cared for and so heard. And that's something that I've never felt in any other relationship or with any other man, to be honest with you.
Safe, cared for, and heard.
Mm-hmm.
And they overlap.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But they're different things, right?
I think they're different. For me, they're different, yeah.
And where does the safety come from? That was an example, right? That was one example of how he creates safety for you, because he heard that you were upset, acknowledged that he'd made a misstep, changed, and now is reliable in that change. So that's an example, but what's the overarching thing?
I think it's truth. And like when I come to him and tell him the truth about anything about my feelings or something that happened or my desires, if I'm truthful with him, it is safe. He's not going to judge me. He's not going to shame me. He's not going to make me the bad person.
When you say judge, you mean shame or make you bad, right? Because
I guess so, yeah.
And this is probably semantic too,
yeah.
But I just, the word judge, I always think about it. I think, well, we kind of judge everybody.
He doesn't
always.
he doesn't make me like a weirdo if I have, he doesn't say, I don't want to be with you. He doesn't say you're wrong.
Yeah, but he might someday.
I don't think he will.
He does really like you. He really does like you. He really does.
He is the king of approval for not just me, for everyone.
I really love this. A friend of mine called me up the other day while I was on my road trip through the desert. And he said, and he's having a really hard time. And he said, I just think that ultimately when people come together, it's like a Venn diagram. You have one circle of desires and opinions and another circle of desires and opinions, and they're going to overlap to some degree. And that overlap is where people are allowed to live from there forward. And that's so restrictive. And he's like, and I just don't think a relationship can ever work for more than a few years, because ultimately you're going to get sick of the little shaded area as your life. And he said, what about the rest of my life? And he said, is it just a matter of finding people whose circles overlap a lot? Like, is that just a matter of luck? Do you just have to find somebody who has a lot of overlap with you?
No.
And then we got cut off, and we never actually got to talk about it. And that was his question. That was a day ago. Yeah, no. What's your answer?
Absolutely not. It's not so much that what overlaps. It's more your willingness to listen, approve, and expand and try. So in improvisation, when you say no, the scene ends, right? When you say yes and, that's where the scene goes on. And that's my viewpoint of life. It's like, how we try this? Yes and. How we try this? Yes and. And so it's the willingness to know my own fear, because people say no out of fear more often than not. If you do that, it's going to evoke this or this. Yeah. So we live in a fear-based society, and we definitely live in a society of disapproval. You're never doing anything right. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. Your hair's too long. Your hair's too short. You work too much. You work too little. Et cetera, et cetera. We live in a society that says you're doing it wrong. In our relationship, we have our own little mini society of approval. And so whatever she does is right. Anything she does is right. Now, anything right can be adjusted. It can become better. But from that viewpoint, the openness for both of us to say, let's try this and let's tweak it to make sure it fits for both of us, then there's possibility to play. Like improvise, the scene goes on. But most people, their first response is no, because we're trained to say no. Her relationship, her marriage was one of no. This is a relationship of yes. And it doesn't mean we have to do it right now or even do it ever. But it's a yes to let's explore it, to see what's underneath it. And in doing so, there's so much possibility.
But if that's true, then couldn't you go and have an equally amazing relationship with that woman that you told the story about not wanting to ohm, but it was her birthday? You didn't like her. You weren't attracted to her. Could you go have this amazing of a relationship with her?
Well, back then, a year into my practice, no, I didn't have these viewpoints. And, this is 15 years of work you're seeing the result of. This is not something I start off with day one. I was a no. I was so tight around money. I was so tight about viewpoints. I was such a, jealous hoarder, like my emotionally, so that was 1998. This is 2016. So I guess it's 18 years. Now it's just like, I could possibly have that relationship with that woman today. It's possible. And I'm also around a lot of people who aren't as big a yes as Morgan. We match in that. I don't know if that woman, I don't have any idea if she's a yes to it. It's the mutual yes. I can't be a yes for both of us. I can't be approval for both of us. I had to find someone who was willing to engage with me and expand to have the relationship we have.
That's the part that I would talk about with your friend who has this idea about the Venn diagram. It's like on a different level of abstraction. Is he in alignment with what he really wants? Because if he was, and he really approved of what he really wanted, and he was really a yes to his own desires, he would actually match up with someone who overlapped him and had the same desires. Because of the law of attraction.
Okay. But you have to say more about it.
Well, we're magnets to like. So just like my marriage was actually a mirror of my internal state. Everything that he said to me and everything that was emotionally abusive and all the nasty things, that was actually what I was thinking about myself. Until I started to love myself, I couldn't not be a match to that.
I always loved that way of looking at life, but then you bump into somebody who's just a lovely human and has horrible circumstances, and you think, it's almost like blaming them for their circumstances. In our society right now, for sure, for rape, for example, you definitely can't blame the victim for the rape.
No, definitely not.
So what's the distinction?
Well, we could go on a large tangent on this one, but what I would say is that they actually have some kind of an imprint, probably a childhood wound, that made them a match to that energy because they haven't completed the childhood wound. So it is not they are not to blame. Absolutely not. People are responsible for their own behavior. The perpetrator was obviously responsible, but you could actually look at that experience. It's a horrible experience to have, and you could look at it and take what you need to take from it, which is like there is some pattern that wants to be healed. It's the same thing when I work with clients like that have cancer or whatever. There's some underlying wound that actually has been suppressed. The emotions have been suppressed, and they're coming out that way saying, hello, I need some attention. It's basically us saying we need to put our attention on ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
It's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
It's lovely, but just to put the period on that sentence so that it doesn't feel like a loose thread out there.
Yeah.
Since we're probably not going to spend too much time on it.
Yeah.
The idea is that our experiences in life, our circumstances in life, are an outward expression of our internal wounds, histories, and elements that need to be or don't need to be, but could be expressed and explored and let go.
Absolutely. Our subconscious is on record when we're children. So we pick up all the stuff and then we keep it unless we choose to look at it and change it.
Today's episode is sponsored by Knock Knock, the makers of the beautifully designed and exceptionally useful Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. Something we hear on the show over and over is how important it is to tell your partner what they mean to you. And you can't do it just once. This is something you've got to work on continually over time, which for some of us, like myself, can be a bit of a challenge. And that's where Knock Knock comes in. Their Fill in the Love collection makes it easy to tell your partner what they mean to you. You just fill in the blanks, and suddenly you've got a super cool and a really well-designed expression of your love. I have to admit that when I first heard of Knock Knock, I was a little skeptical. I was thinking that a fill-in-the-blank gift, maybe it wouldn't feel so genuine, but I have to say, it turns out not to be a problem. Basically, they give you just enough to get started, and then they leave all the critical parts open for you to get as honest and, well, as gushy as you want to get. And they're so well designed that you feel good giving these to your partner. So check out their website at knockknockstuff.com. I think you're really going to like their stuff. I do. So send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock.
Okay. Part of what you're saying is that we're just going to keep talking about it. If we run into a no, we're just going to keep talking and talking until it turns into some kind of a yes.
Well, if we're both no to something, then we won't do it.
Well, okay.
So
true.
change.
If one of you is a no,
one of us, right,
to something important to the other,
then we'll keep talking about it. We'll just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, days, weeks. But you make that sound like it's something bad.
Nope. I'm just curious.
To me, it's something amazing to find that chasm or the difference. It's not always comfortable. And sometimes it doesn't feel good to have that chasm. But to me, it's amazing because what is it that has her be a no to me? What is it about her? So me, it's an opportunity to learn something about it. Or if I'm a no, what is it inside of me that's a no to that? Where am I stuck and where am I clogged? And it could be a really authentic
So anytime
reason.
you're a no, you're clogged?
Anytime you're a no to life, it's because of some reason. It could be a fear or desire.
If you're no to terrorism?
If you're no to terrorism, that's a desire. So on some level, it's like, that's a good no. But it's still a no. It's still a kind of a stop. I'm not saying no or a stop or a clog is bad. That's a judgment that people have. There's reasons that I don't speed on the freeway or text on the freeway. There's reasons, there's health reasons of all why we do it. But it's still, there's a stop, and that stop is either from fear or desire. I never want my no's to be because of fear. I always want my no's because of desire.
So a no to terrorism is a no because of a desire for something like peace?
Peace and nice feelings between people. But terrorism, you have to understand, like, terrorism, on the other side of terrorism, I saw this great thing from the CIA where they said basically no terrorists think they're terrorists. They think they're the Han Solos and the Luke Skywalkers. Yeah. They think they're fighting it. So to me, terrorism is an opportunity for us, the people being terrorized, to say, what do you need to fix this wound? What do you need to resolve this? Now, that resolution may never happen, okay? But it's still reaching out to why that's happening. To bring it back to the relationship, if I'm doing something that really offends her, it's an inquiry. It's more like, what is it that's going on? It's an opportunity for me to know more about myself, more her about herself, and more about each other.
What about something that's really horrendous? Just to try to push this one a little bit.
Okay.
So there's somebody out there who's kidnapping and murdering small children.
Okay.
You're a no to that, obviously.
I'm a no to that.
And you're a no to that because you want the positive out of that is obvious too. You want kids to have happy, healthy lives, and you also don't want the murderer to have to be a murderer, because how awful is that? But are you saying that there's something for the murderer that there's something that we need to understand about the murderer?
For sure. We created the murderer. Society created that murderer. Society did it. His parents, his circumstances, biology. The parents smoked. The parents did drugs. I don't know what, and I don't have enough knowledge to really talk about this. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that murderer needs something. We don't know how to provide that. He doesn't know how to have it, so he murders children.
And he's still guilty.
He's totally guilty. He's totally responsible for his actions.
Yeah.
We're all 100% responsibility. So if she does something to me, I'm responsible for creating the circumstance for that to happen, and she's responsible for doing it.
Yeah.
Everyone's responsible for that case.
Yeah.
Well, like if for some reason you cheated, and I say that like you went on a date and didn't tell me and had sex with a woman or something, and it was outside of our agreement.
Because cheating would just be something outside of the rules.
It's like, I would say to him, why did you feel you needed to hide that? Why didn't you talk about what's going on that you're not having a need met in our relationship? Like, I would go toward him and say, can we have a really honest, candid dialogue about what's going on that had you do that you had to hide that about me, from me, that you had to go outside of our agreement, that all these things without talking to me about it. So like, it's not a bad thing that he did that, but there's some information that we need to get underneath that.
I'll give you something to chew on. So I have a client who is a high-end New York City escort. He actually prefers the word prostitute. She is a high-end $800 per hour prostitute. She said to me time and time again, the men who are seeing her would much rather be doing this with their wives. The wives are a no to whatever the kinkiness that she's having, and so they go to see a professional. But most men would rather have that with their wives. That is the state of our society is in, because that guy doesn't even feel safe enough to express that to his wife.
To even talk about it.
So in doing so, the wife is cold. We blame the guy for seeing the prostitute, but I don't see it that way. I see it's the relationship. It's the wife is unwilling to even open up the space for the man to express his desire that has him go pay $800 an hour.
What if his desire is to cheat? That's what he actually wants.
Well, then say that and then role play that. Like, most people don't want to cheat. I mean, some people get off on the thrill of it for sure, but there's got to be a percentage of people get off on the sneakiness. But most people are not getting at home what they want. And in doing so, they have to look elsewhere. And it could be as small as the husband doesn't say you look pretty today. And so the woman is looking to guys to get validation just because the guy won't say you look pretty. It could be as subtle and as small as that. Or like, thank you for cooking dinner, or thank you for doing, anything. And so we look elsewhere if we're not getting what we want. And so in this relationship, the point is she can ask for whatever she wants. I can ask for whatever I want. It doesn't mean we actually have to do it. But in the freedom of communication, then I don't feel like I need to sneak somewhere else.
Yeah. Got it.
If she cheated on me, I'd be like, why? You can have whatever you want. Why? And in doing so, she doesn't cheat.
Or maybe she wants to cheat.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, though. I think some people enjoy getting off on the sneakiness.
No, there's got to be somebody. If there's something, there's porn for it, as they say.
Yeah.
Everybody, people eroticize whatever there is in this universe.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, but your point still applies to that. I mean, it is actually a very salient argument.
Yeah.
People are going to disagree with it, and people are going to love it. But
yeah.
the argument is complete. Now, we spent a lot of time on this specific topic, and we're pretty much running out of time. Is there something I should have asked you guys about that I didn't?
I don't think so. I mean, I wanted to, something that we've talked about before is like the idea that we really, when we do have any conflict, that we just really stay present with each other. Mm. And I think that is something that doesn't happen with most couples, that someone gets into their ego and they make it something about them and they shut the other person out and they run away and they just don't talk about it, or they just cover it up with a bunch of stuff. And we kind of just we stay really present with each other. We allow each other to have our feelings, and we just stick in it until we can figure out whatever the solution is or whatever the underlying issue is. And a lot of times it's like me getting triggered by something that he did that is a really a long time ago wound from when I was a child. And so this is triggering my stuff, which expands me, because when I start to look at my stuff from before that's getting triggered, I'm actually able to grow as a person.
Genius. I'm so glad you said it, because I did want to ask about exactly that when you were talking about the story of being stuck on the bus with each other and you having your sadness and it being okay to have your sadness. And I wanted to know what Robert did with your having sadness, and I wanted to know what you did with your having sadness and his reaction to it. And that's what you're talking about here. So, okay, let me summarize it, or just kind of repeat what you said so I make sure I understand it. You're basically saying, when we have a conflict, an emotion is going to come up, and there's value in allowing the emotion to have its space, because then we can understand from where it arises. And understanding from where it arises is how we learn about ourselves, and that causes us to expand as people, and then our relationship grows. Did I miss anything?
No, you're spot on.
Okay, so true. That's my kind of core philosophy about everything. But it's so hard. It is so hard. I mean, when you're in the midst of a fight, you're in a fight. I mean, I don't know if you guys fight, but when you're in the midst of a conflict and fear manifests and then causes sadness or withdrawal or anger, that feeling is real. It's in the moment. And a lot of times it takes control. What do you do?
You used the word good and bad before. And to me, most people think fighting, conflict, anger, sadness, jealousy is bad. I have the viewpoint that it's right. It's not even good. It's right. And interesting, actually. You're getting jealous about that? That's interesting. You're getting sad about that? That's interesting. I can still feel my feelings in reaction to her sadness, but it's still interesting. Most men have a spectrum of emotions that is very narrow, especially compared to a woman, because her entire life had the spectrum of emotions. So, I'm having my hands really close to each other for men and really wider for women. So men have a very small capacity, and they'll often check out or more often fight back if a woman goes outside the spectrum of an acceptable emotional level. I've trained myself through oming and other practices to increase my range really wide, and wider than I ever thought possible. In doing so, all her feelings are right and interesting, and an opportunity for me to know her. I can still feel bad. I can still feel sad. It doesn't mean I'm distant or disconnected. But if I can have the spectrum where her feelings are right and my feelings are right, then we don't have to push it down. We don't have to push it away. That's where the cancer is, when you push those feelings down. That's where the therapy comes from. I watch her do it with her kids in hand-in-hand parenting. She sits while the kid has a tantrum for hours. And I'm like, how the fuck does she do that? But she just stays with them. And then the kid has the feelings, and then the kid pops up and plays with the dog. And it's just inspired me to increase my range to know, because when you say time out or shut it down, that's where the disconnection occurs.
What about when, I'm imagining that the scenario where she's having emotions is a scenario in which she's having an emotion, but it's not your fault. Mm-hmm. What would happen if you were having that conversation and she was blaming you for the emotion? She was saying, this is your fault. You did this. You did this to me. And whatever, was blaming you. And it was a strong emotion. Then would you still be able to have that same capacity for it? Or does it change with that added?
We both have the viewpoint that we're responsible for our own emotions. So, I can provide serious stimuli
for emotion.
For her to have an emotion.
Yeah.
She can apply serious stimuli for me to have an emotion. But we're still responsible. I'm still responsible for my emotions and response. She's still responsible for her emotions. So she can blame me for the stimuli. And a lot of times I know I'll be like, yeah, I did that. But I still see her as her responsible for her emotions.
Yeah.
So sometimes her emotions will trigger my emotions. And then we'll be back in this really bad tennis match. But even that, I know I'm still responsible for my emotions.
Yeah.
If she can blame me for all she wants. She can blame me till the cows come home. She doesn't, but she can. But I still know in my mind, in my practice, in my self-validating world, that she's responsible for her emotions. I'm responsible for the stimuli. She's responsible for the emotions. In doing so, then I can have the clarity to keep the space open till they all play out.
And then you can also look at the stimuli.
Right. What was my motivations for the stimuli? Yeah, I did do that. Okay, you're right. And to validate it, I can validate her emotions without taking responsibility for them. And I can validate, I did do that stimuli, and you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And let me think. I think there's something else I want to ask about that. So she could trigger your emotions. And if it becomes a tennis match, Morgan, then what do you guys do? If it's an emotion tennis match back and forth, one emotion triggers the other.
We just stay in the spot. We still stay there. We stay present with each other, and we still have our feelings, and all of our feelings are right. Talking about what you talked about before, does he feel bad or guilty for triggering my feelings? And the thing is, if you look back to most of our childhoods, we were told that when we had feelings, if we had a tantrum or we had something come up, we should go to our rooms, shut the door, and handle our shit as a child. Come back when you're ready and you calmed yourself down, right?
Yeah, that is what we're told.
So the thing is, most kids, when they have a tantrum, they see physically their parents get upset. They shut them out. Yeah. They shame them. They try to treat them like dogs, obedience, right?
Yeah. Well, there are times when it's not convenient to have your kid have a temper tantrum.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been there.
Would you? I almost said the word appropriate, but I'm suspecting you wouldn't apply that term.
I still don't, even when it's not appropriate or not, optimal for a child in the middle of the store to be having a tantrum. You can remove them from the situation. You can walk outside. Yeah. Yes. But shutting down their feelings is what we're all taught. Right? We're taught our feelings aren't right. It's not okay for us to be sad or upset. Hence it's a bad feeling. It's really not. It's a feeling. It's not bad or good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just stay with it. If it's a tennis match, it's a tennis match, and it's going to get bounced back and forth as long as it gets.
This happened to us last weekend. She came with a stimuli. I had a reaction. She had a reaction. I forgot I was unable to borrow a camera for her. And I said I would, and I didn't keep my word. In the end, the camera was in a different country. And then she got frustrated. And then I came home and she said, I'm upset about the camera. And then I felt my own feelings come up. And
Which was inadequacy or something?
Inadequacy, and unable to produce my woman. Then annoyance that she asked for the fucking camera. And then just like this, and I was honest about my fucking annoyance about that, so it was just like some withheld stuff. And so for a good 3 hours, we were connected but rocky. But then at some point it just dissolved. It's sort of like it just ran out. If I were to, in my past relationships, I would, push it down and be like, everything's fine, honey. And this false Stepford husband sort of thing, but instead the difference was, no, we just sat in the emotions. And then, 2 or 3 hours later, it was gone, and it was authentically gone.
Yeah, it is true. The emotions pass. It's when you hold them down that they just fester.
And
for sure.
Moldy.
For sure. Okay. Genius. Genius. Thank you both. What a lovely, fun, fantastic conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Now, as you may know, I like to end shows with a quick game of this or that.
Okay.
So, you have kids.
I do.
I've been asking this lately for people who have kids. Do your kids play Would You Rather with you?
No.
They don't.
We should do that, though. We should totally do it.
I don't know what this game is.
Oh, okay.
Would You Rather was like, would you rather fall in a pit of hot lava or get eaten by sharks? And that's the little kid example I've been using a lot lately. But what the heck, I'll ask you guys too. Okay. Sharks or lava?
Lava.
I'm going with the sharks.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Seems hotter. I don't know.
I guess I could have predicted that. Sharks is kind of, it's gruesome, but it's sexier.
Yeah, if you're going to go down.
Sharks.
In little pieces. Yeah.
Chum the water.
Exactly.
If I'm going out, I'm chumming the water.
And it's a meal. It's a meal for another life being. So
you're so giving.
I'm a tasty snack.
The true, what's the word for that? Gives of themselves.
I'm a giver.
Altruistic. The true altruist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about you?
I would go with lava.
Yeah.
For the two of those. Yeah. Because as much as I am open to experience, I prefer not to have pain. Yeah. And I feel like lava would be quicker. And also, as somebody said yesterday, I would get to see the inside of a volcano on the way down.
That's a good point. It's a valid argument.
That's a pretty good answer, right? Hilarious. Okay. Batman or Superman?
Batman. Do you even know?
I think Batman, yeah.
Yeah.
Batman, yeah.
Why?
I don't know. He's kind of sexy, like in the mask.
I like Batman because he didn't have any superpowers. He was a self-made man, and he
so logical.
He was a detective, and he just was living in the shadows.
Versus Superman,
who was came from Krypton and had his own superpowers, and kind of out there in the open. Superman's kind of a goody-goody too, and Batman's kind of a, dark je ne sais quoi sort of thing. So definitely cooler.
Yeah.
And he had so many more toys.
Yeah.
So many more toys. Superman didn't have any toys. Batman had so many cool toys. Lucius Fox was a good man. You have no idea what that is.
No, we don't. No,
okay,
no.
Okay, enlightenment or $1 billion?
Oh, enlightenment. Yeah.
Enlightenment.
And why?
Money's easy.
Is it?
It's just physical. I don't know. I think that probably the high kind of that you get from enlightenment, like true enlightenment, would be way surpass anything we had in life.
Yeah.
In this life.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Money's easy, and I can live on. I've lived on $1,000 a month. I've spent $10,000 a month. It's not it. It's who I am in the world. And money's easy.
Okay, cool. And if you had to either live for infinity or die in the next 5 minutes, which would it be?
Infinity.
That's a tough one for me, actually. That really is. I guess infinity.
Because he said it?
Because at some point, even infinity will end. The world will change. Something will happen. If my life was a good quality of life, I wouldn't want to live to infinity if I was sick.
Yeah.
Not well.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just some genie standing on the table being like, no more data, but these are your options.
Maybe 5 minutes.
In that case, you go 5. Okay.
Because I'll come back to life if I really want to.
Love it.
I'm not ready to go. I got more to do than 5 minutes. Aww. I got a lot of work to do. Got a lot of lives to save. Souls to change.
Sold. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Well, that's it for our interview with Robert and Morgan, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Robert, you can find his business consulting website at candelconsulting.com. That's Kandell consulting.com. And I'll put a link to that in our show notes. Be sure to check out our sponsors for today's episode, Knock Knock, makers of the Fill in the Love collection of fill-in-the-blank journals, postcards, and letters that you can use to express your love to anyone. You can find their website at knockknockstuff.com, and I'll put a link to that in our show notes. Send some love with Fill in the Love from Knock Knock. And if you liked what you heard on our show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a big difference when you do that. And also, please consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, as I've said so many times, and I do mean it. You can find our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/together. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us via one of our platforms. We'd love to hear from people. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are at @together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. That's all for today, folks. See you next Monday.